A goal, Quishbilly, Huddersfield Town! The most famous goal of Quishbilly's life.
Is this the moment for Lee Fowler? It is. Take your place in Division 2, Huddersfield Town.
Ruby and Steve Simonson's boots now. He's missed. Steve Simonson clears the frame of the goal and collapses in a heap of tears. Huddersfield Town are promoted.
Mustafa Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Hello and welcome back to the Andy Takes That Chance podcast review show. It's Transfer Christmas as Town bring in two players from archery enthusiasts Wolverhampton Wanderers. One for the old-time listeners is that one. And continue their 100% league form with a close win over Shrewsbury Town. Although a section of Town fans were less than impressed after the game. Right, joining me today, I've got a couple of likely lads. I've got the big man back in the big chair, Neil Wayne. Are you okay, Neil?
I'm good, mate. Thanks, you.
Very good. And back for the first time this season, his seasonal debut, it's Mr. Gillespie, Jonny Gillespie. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Not so bad.
Good. Can hear you typing away there. So getting your stats up, ready to roll. Right, boys, let's get into it.
I'm just writing down Nigel's surname because if you're not referring to him as Nigel, I need a bit of practice on that.
Yeah.
Van Dijk. Right, okay. Let's get into the game. The pod's out a couple of days late this week because it was my birthday, so I've been away for a few days. So no apologies from me. Let's look at the game. Right, so Huddersfield 1, Shrewsbury 0. We'll go with that one first. Lee Nichols in goal, Tom Lees, Mikael Hellick, Brodie Spencer, Sorensen, Evans, Hogg, Wiles, Miller, Ward, Marshall. I thought it might be a bit harsh on Josh Koroma, if I'm honest. I thought he'd had a reasonable start to the season. Tommy O'Reilly on loan for Shrewsbury from Aston Villa, I thought was excellent for them in this game. He played Marquis in very early in the first minute. Nichols makes a save. Although Marquis was given offside, I think that was a sign of things to come. But then Town take over a little bit, boys. Marshall has a chance at the far post, but misses the ball. Great movement in the box, though. You've got to give him credit that for a 19-year-old. His movement in and around that penalty box is very mature. Again, 10 minutes later, he showed great movement again to head at the keeper from a really good cross from Mikael Miller on his right foot. He should score, let's be honest, but it's a great save. And again, I want to stress how good his timing and his movement is for a 19-year-old on his full league debut as well. So then third time lucky, 10 minutes later, it peels off to the far post. And again, it's just, Neil, it's just really good striking movement. It's almost old school, isn't it? You know, sort of taking that gamble of pulling away and that Danny Ward's not going to flick it on because if he does, he's in an offside position. So he's reading situations really well for someone his age, and then he brings it down nicely and he finishes it really well as well. So a lot of good moments there for Marshall. I mean, he would probably go off wanting more than one goal, but for me, those three moments showed a real sort of craft and intelligence for someone his age.
On another day, comes off with a match ball, doesn't he? To be honest, he's a bit of a on another day. He's a bit of a fox in the box, isn't he? He's got that bit of, for a young lad, he's got that little bit of old school about him. Tends to read everything around the box really well, which showed him the chances that he didn't take, and then the one that he did, I thought were a really, really clever finish. It would have been one that he could have made a complete ash of and slashed at it or tried to edit, and he showed a lot of composure, especially after the earlier miss. I mean, to be fair, it would have missed, but what a save. You know, you've got to give keeper credit there. It's a great save. But yeah, cracking goal and fortunately for us, good enough to win game.
What have you made of Marshall then, Johnny? You know, he's played against Morecambe. He scored against Morecambe, looked quite sharp. Came on as a sub against Stevenage. I think not a lot of time to do things there. Full league debut. I think there's a lot of good little points, isn't there, to his game, and you can certainly see why Town have gone out and signed him because he runs beyond like no one else really does in the team.
Yeah, he does. I think the other thing I just add there, I know when we got the feedback from his previous loan, like he said he's a little bit lightweight for West Brom and kind of, but I think he's kind of, in the time he's had, I think he kind of knocked a little bit of that out of him as well, because I remember in the first game, his first league game, quite quickly early on. He got absolutely flattened right in front of me, and he kind of picked himself up and dusted himself down and carried on, and just like it was nothing. And I think he's obviously got that. He has got a bit about him. He's still quite slight as build, but he runs hard and he's physical to a certain extent for his size, for his age. And I think he's recognised that and he's developed. But he's skillful. We were told around his ability to finish, or his talent in finishing, and you can see that in his goal against Shrewsbury. He does take his time. He doesn't have a lot of time, but the time he's got, he does take it, and he's a really nice finish. Like Neil said, I think that bodes well. But he's a hustler. He's a runner. He's also a finisher. I think he'll be a good asset. Like with any younger player, it's that consistency, not overusing him. And if we can kind of strengthen the numbers in up front, we won't need to overuse him. But I do think he can really contribute to Huddersfield this season. He's probably more than what we've got in younger players that we've got in our books permanently. That's probably why he's a West Ham player, not a Town player. But I do think he will contribute to this season and be a good asset.
So that's 2 goals already for the young man. So after that, really, Town. I think there's 2 ways of looking at this. Were Shrewsbury much improved, or did Town's complacency from the second half against Stevenage kick in? I think perhaps there's maybe even a little bit of both. That seemed to be the sort of the topic on most people's lips, Neil. How did you see the rest of the first half from there? Because Tommy O'Reilly, who I thought was really good on the day, with the pink boots for Shrewsbury. You're obviously going to stand out with pink boots. You've got to be a bit brave, haven't you, to wear sassy boots like that. He hits the bar with what honestly is a phenomenal save by Lee Nichols. You watch that back, and Nichols just about gets a touch on it. It's fantastic. So I don't think he's had enough credit, to be honest, Lee Nichols, for that stopper. It is a really, really good stop. I know he's like 6'5" or something, isn't he? And an absolute spider in goal, but it's still a great save. And then he makes another stop from Marquis, who again comes through 1-on-1. Nichols makes himself big. Yeah. The transfer window closes tomorrow. I think it's tomorrow, isn't it? But we're seeing a rejuvenated Lee Nichols in many ways. He's back shithousing with a smirk on his face, and it just sort of like feels like he's enjoying being that prick in goal. You know what I mean? Who's fake diving and like taking those. It's when he's at his best, isn't it? Just by being that character. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why we love him, because we're shithouses as well, aren't we? So, correct. How did you see that? Because I thought Lee Nichols kept us in for the next period. Really, sort of kept Shrewsbury at bay. I thought it was really good. But how were Town? Were they complacent, or was Shrewsbury just a lot better than we expected?
I think it's always somewhere in the middle, innit? I think Town did maybe think once they'd gone 1 up that they were going to go on and maybe win comfortably after Shrewsbury got battered last week. But I think you see it a lot, don't you? When a team gets absolutely ruined 1 week, generally speaking, the week after they're a lot tighter. I think I fully expected Shrewsbury to come and be how they were, but they looked a better football inside than Stevenage did. For me, thought they looked really, really, really decent going forward. The lad you mentioned clearly got that little bit of quality about him. Brilliant save from Nichols, and I think on Nichols, he's looked more like Nichols again. Obviously, the little bits of complete shithousery, like the leaving the lad sat on his arse at Peterborough when he was coming at him, and just the odd little bits. Hell of a save. I'm not sure he saves that last season. He just looked devoid of any kind of confidence. But he looks like he's back in the groove, I think. So that can only be a good thing. Let's get that window slam shut and keep him.
We love Lee Nichols on this podcast.
Yeah.
Johnny, I was quite impressed with Shrewsbury in a lot of ways. I was quite impressed tactically by them, by what they were doing. They seemed to be high pressing initially. But if the high press failed, they sort of fell into a low block. So tactically, they were really good. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But what really seemed to catch Town out defensively during this period as well, and I keep talking about, we'll talk about the Walsall game, but it's that diagonal ball every time from right to left over the top of the middle centre-back's head. Just drop it over, and we really struggle with it. And we struggled with it with Marquis in this game. But what Shrewsbury did really well is Town commit the 2 wing-backs really high up the pitch. So what Shrewsbury were doing, whenever it broke down, if the keeper, Savin, I thought had a really good game for Shrewsbury, if he got the ball, or one of the defenders got the ball, it was quickly into midfield, and they were trying to break really quickly and catch us at the back, sort of 3-on-3, and kind of bring those numbers together and overload in those areas. And I was really impressed with Paul Hurst and Shrewsbury to consider where they were coming into the game after being piped by Peterborough 4-1. I think they'd lost to Fulham's kids, hadn't they? And all sorts. For me, I sat there and I thought, do you know what? These lot aren't the worst team in the league by any stretch.
No, I'd agree. I think it's a bit of how the league setup works, isn't it? Sometimes you can look a bit of a better footballing team, but not necessarily yield results. Sometimes you can be a bit more of a Stevenage and get stuff over the line. I think that's just the league that we're in. But yeah, I was expecting them to be probably a little bit worse than they were. I guess it's early days, isn't it? We've seen teams kind of start poorly, and actually, it's not really a good testament to how they are because it's a sample size. I think a few Town fans, quite understandably on the hype train, think, oh, only 1-0. They've been battered. They're struggling. Maybe we should have done more. But I think I don't think Shrewsbury, looking at how they played at the Town ground on Saturday, will kind of be a team that sits at the bottom for too long. They look tactically aware. They've got some good players, some good midfielders, I thought. And I think you're right. They recognise the gap, which it isn't necessarily too much of a secret, that ball over with kind of the gap in between the wing backs and the kind of the left or right centre back, more commonly the right centre back on that right side with Sorensen pushing on. And it does work. It is a problem. And we obviously managed to keep a shutout against Shrewsbury through excellent saves by Nichols, or maybe just slight kind of in other chances, a little bit of lack of quality at Shrewsbury's part when it came to the final pass or the finishing. But teams will be better than Shrewsbury, and teams might look to exploit that. But no, I thought they looked all right. Kind of worked hard, some of all their parts. A few kind of stand up little bits of talents. I thought Perry played well in the middle, and like you said, we've always talked about O'Reilly. Marquis another day probably feels a bit aggrieved not to get a goal. I mean, he's come against a top championship keeper rather than a League One keeper. But yeah, I thought. I mean, they were different outfits to what we faced. I think we faced three very different teams, really, with Peterborough, Stevenage, and Shrewsbury, and we've kind of come out on top. But whilst at the same time being a little bit lucky on our side as well, I think.
Me and Killer both predicted quite resounding wins in the warm-up show. I think I predicted 4-0 and Killer said 3-0. So the Shrewsbury definitely made me and him look like a couple of idiots. So that's always a bonus.
What bit first, eh?
I know, every week it'll be like this. But, I mean, talking about that, though, afterwards, Town do miss some chances in this game. And when you go back through them, you sort of sit there and think, actually, it could have been fun. I know Shrewsbury have had their chances, and we'll speak to Chris from Salopcast in a little bit. But I think after this period, Shrewsbury kind of fell away a little bit. And then their sort of Achilles heels being in the latter part of games. And Town, when you do look at it, Hogg misses a chance, doesn't he? He kind of snatches at it at the end of the first half, doesn't he? I think it's just for Jonathan Hogg. It's like, oh, this don't come around very often. He just kind of,
what am I doing here?
Goes, oh, yeah, he kind of grabs at it a little bit, doesn't he? Yeah, and it's like, oh, I could see how excited he was when it fell for him, but he lashed it over. And I thought Karoma came on and made a difference up front. He really did. He's really lively, and he plays in Reece Healy, with a really nice reverse ball. Shades of Aaron Moy with a reverse ball. If anyone hits a nice reverse ball, I immediately think Aaron Moy in the glory days. Healy sort of scuffs it wide. Again, good movement from both strikers, just lacking the finish. Then Karoma plays in Healy again. It's possibly offside, actually, when you look at it back. And Healy, you say Healy misses the one-on-one, but the way the goalkeeper gets that leg across, he must cover about 7 or 8 yards with his leg. It comes out of nowhere. It's like Groot, from Marvel, when the arm comes out. It's a really good save again. But I think Healy will be disappointed, as will Karoma, when he hits the bar from 6 yards. But again, he is given offside. I suppose the point really is that despite coming away 1-0, and Town fans were quite gloomy, I think, in some respects about only winning 1-0 against Shrewsbury, which is a little bit disrespectful to Shrewsbury in itself. And I don't think Huddersfield fans should fall into this trap of just turning up and expecting to win games in this league. We've been in this league before. It absolutely flipped us around and kicked our ass for 12 years before we managed to get out of it. So I don't think Huddersfield fans should really be... I know I won't be, because we saw it before. Maybe some of the fans who are a little bit younger, maybe, who've only seen Premier League and Championship. But this league has a really nasty habit of dragging you down under the water and keeping your head underwater as well. It's not an easy league. It's a dirty, nasty league, is this division.
I think we've got the capability, haven't we, to go and beat teams 3, 4, 5. You can see the players that we've got at this level are able to do that. but the teams at this level obviously aware that we can do that and are going to come and fired up to play at Town. We are, as much as I don't like using this phrase really, but we are one of the big fish in this league. We just are. So we're there to be shot at. Teams are going to come and have a go. Sort of almost a nothing to lose, which is I felt a bit like how Shrewsbury played on Saturday, bit of a nothing to lose on the night into nothing, and probably a little bit unfortunate not to get something. But that said, with the chances that we made, Ely's, I know it's a great save, but he's got to score that 1-on-1, and that's going to be the difference at this level. But isn't it nice to not play really, really well and still get that win? We've seen enough defeats over the last 8, 9, 10 years.
Absolutely. I think that really brings it up. I think that's the Shrewsbury game got all in, isn't it? I don't think there's anything really else to delay on. It wasn't the best. But what we'll do is we'll take a swift break and we'll be back quite shortly and we'll continue discussing it. Okay, welcome back to the podcast. Just before the break, we were just talking about how good Shrewsbury were in terms of tactically on the day. We discussed, Johnny, the tactics. Do you think, and we've briefly touched upon it as well there, is this game kind of an early warning to supporters that some games are just going to be a slog by design of the opposition? Because if we've spent the last 2 years in the Championship being absolutely rubbish and fighting against teams with more money, with better players, better facilities, etc. Although to Town's credit, the facilities are quite decent now. And now the roles are reversed, other teams are now going to try and drag us down. Do we as supporters need to understand that and be a bit more patient? And I've seen I had a little look at social media after we lost to Walsall, and I just turned it off. I just thought I can't cope with a lot of this. They just don't want to, because it's just so over the top, some of the response and reaction. Do you think this is just Town fans are just going to have to get used to this, and some games will be horrible, and there will be 0-0, there will be 1-0, and they will be difficult? Do we just need to sort of realign expectations, I think, a little bit, Johnny?
Yeah, I think so. I think Town fans are just a little bit brittle through a few years of, like what you described there, disappointment on off the field. And before we start recording, I said to Neil, I think had we done Shrewsbury 3-0, 4-1, the reaction to Walsall would have been different. I think it's the amalgamation of the two. People thinking, yeah, we beat Shrewsbury, but it wasn't great. It could have gone the other way. And equally, I agree with you. I think it could have gone a lot more in Town's favour. Add that to the Walsall game, just gives that kind of feeling towards it. But again, it's just understanding and recognising, like Neil said, we are that big a fish, and we've like I said, we played 3 games and we've been called a Championship team twice by 2 managers, because for all intents and purposes, we kind of still are. We've still got a relatively similar squad. Some people even say this is a better team than we had last season on paper on the field. So teams are going to come and look to set up. And certainly coming to our place, most teams would probably be happy with a point outside of that top 4, top 6. Will be happy with a point. So they're going to, and they've got that from the first minutes. That's how they're going to set up. And we're not used to seeing that. We're not used to kind of like having to kind of break teams down and things not working. And Tom Lees' interview after Shrewsbury game alluded to that, where he talks about patience and trying to turn players around and create gaps and keep the ball and play it out and come back, and you're trying to kind of get those kind of 2-on-1s and get rid of those and make it more 1-on-1s. And that's not how we've normally played. We've normally been in the back foot. We've normally not had the ball. We're looking to break and counter. And it's that mindset, isn't it? Sometimes we'll be happy with the 1-1 if we kind of like keep them out and counter and go and win back in the Championship. But it's different, and it can get frustrating. We're not necessarily used to it. And not every game is going to be 2-3-0. We are going to have great chances like we did against Shrewsbury, great chances. And from watching the highlights, you kind of remember how many there were. And for what for good save I hit the post, it would have been more. But it is that kind of just that temperament where sometimes it won't work out and it will be 0-0. But we are going to create those chances. It is going to be frustrating. But that's just the difference of being a big team at the top of the table with a bit of a bigger budget and better players versus trying to like be dogged and get that point like other teams. Some of the teams will come and do when they come to the Town ground. But yeah, it's I think it's just down to the brittleness of the Town fan mentality at the moment, where it's just realigning to that, but also trying to put to bed over many seasons of things not working out and not having that belief that, so I mean, okay, we've lost to Walsall, that's it, season's over, everything's going to go downhill from here. hopefully it will be the case. But you can forgive Town fans a little bit.
You never know, do you? You never know. It's like
brittleness when it comes to that.
You never know, do you? Yeah. Let's talk about Danny Ward and Jonathan Hogg. Both came in for a lot of criticism after the game. I've started doing player ratings this season, and I gave them both a 4, which is below average. I thought it wasn't the game for either of them. I mean, Hogg came in for a lot of criticism online afterwards, people saying he's finished, etc. And I mean, some people say things like that sometimes in jest, sometimes in frustration. I don't find it particularly helpful in the public realm, though, if you know what I mean. I mean, when we did the warm-up, one person didn't understand what I meant by horses for courses, or in the warm-up thing. So to use another analogy, people might understand. Styles make fights. That's what we say in it, Johnny. So for me, the game, as I mentioned in the warm-up, was never one for Jonathan Hogg. Was this Shrewsbury was not a game for Hoggy. It was blatantly obvious from the outside looking in. But Herbie Kane's injury probably changed a lot of thinking there, and Hoggy's probably had to play a lot more in that game than what he was supposed to do. So that's fair enough. However, I still find the overall criticism of him a little bit too much. I mean, there are games. What I mean is there are going to be games this season where his style isn't needed because we need to be more front foot and more ball playing. So Herbie Kane sat there against the Shrewsbury. Herbie Kane sat there trying to thread those balls through. I know he was injured, but that was the point before we knew that. There are going to be games where we need someone deeper threading through balls. I mean, we've just signed Joe Hodge, who plays as a 6 or an 8, so he could potentially be that one that does it. But there are still going to be games where Jonathan Hogg's really important throughout this season. His experience, his leadership qualities, his ability to knit you together and to bring people together into that compact system when you're defending as well. The instructions coming from on the field as well, which Michael Duff's already alluded to, are all going to be important. We know he's not a great passer of a football. He's never been a great passer of a football. He's always been that warrior next to someone who can pass a ball. So a lot of the problems as well against Shrewsbury and against Walsall were from the defence and the number 6 not being able to pass a football, not being able to pass it effectively anyway into the final third. It's not the strength of those players. So I'm really sort of pleased that the club have gone out and they've signed Nigel Lonwyke and Joe Hodge, who apparently are good on the ball and can progress the ball through the third. So I think I'm really pleased that Wolverhampton Archery FC have given us those 2 players, and that should change the way that we view things. But I do think a lot of it's very premature on Jonathan Hogg, because he will be needed at certain points this season. When you're struggling and your back's against the wall, say, for example, we go away to Bolton and we're winning 1-0 and Bolton are absolutely rattling at us in the last 20 minutes. The one man you look to and want to bring on in that situation is Jonathan Hogg, to make things a little calmer, to get his foot in, to spoil, to be awkward. He's going to play a big part this season, whether people like that or not. What I've meant throughout this season is that there are going to be times when he's needed and times when his style probably isn't needed. But we've got a game coming up against Rotherham at the weekend, and you can certainly look at Jonathan Hogg being a really important factor, Johnny, for games like that.
Absolutely. I think when we signed this contract, I don't think he was expecting to play Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, which if he plays and starts on Saturday, that's what we've done. He's played him. He's 3 back-to-back 90 minutes, and he turns 36 in December. So it's like I say, it is horses for courses. We've got an injury. He's covered. It's covering that. We've obviously brought an addition in. Had that addition been brought in a couple of weeks earlier, again, would he have played? Possibly not. Would he have played 30 minutes at the end or 60 minutes at the beginning? Possibly. I don't think he was too bad against Stevenage. I think that's necessarily a better game that he's played so far. And I think that shows the type of team that Stevenage are, a bit more physical, a bit more of a slower paced. If we play a quick passing team, a bit dynamic, Hoggy's he's going to get found out. But I think we're fully aware of that. I think Hoggy's probably aware of that at this point in his career. So it's like it's hard to slate a guy who's probably on paper thinking, well, okay, it's not ideal, but I've not got quite in my legs as much as I used to. Not that he was necessarily that dynamic before, and he's kind of like doing a job where he's probably been asked to do a little bit more than he needs to or can do. But the thing about Hoggy is it's what he'll bring. it's like you said there, Matt, but it's also what he brings off the field. I mean, how he leads from the front, his ability to kind of like whip younger players into shape and kind of drive it forward, which in any season you need, but certainly season, if you're going up looking at Jimmy after a successful campaign, what he'll do off the field and what he'll come on and do in like key points in the season, absolutely certain that'll be the case. And that's where Hoggy will come into his own. He's not going to be playing 90 minutes week in, week out, unless we absolutely need him to. And if we need him to, then that's, going to be things outside of his control that are the case. So I think it's recognising, understanding that. And yeah, he, when asked upon, he'll do a job. But we've now got a bit more depth. And obviously, when Herbie Kane comes back again, we've got kind of 3 players who can play a little bit deep. I know we're kind of asking Kane to do a little bit slightly outside of his remit. But Hodge looks an exciting player who can kind of pick up and do maybe a little bit more and be a bit more on the ball than Hoggy is. But certainly in bigger games where we need a shutout in last 20 to 25 minutes, I think there's a lot worse you can bring on than Jonathan Hogg.
I think we agree with that, don't we, Neil? I mean, Danny Ward's probably slightly different. I just felt like Danny Ward looked a little bit. Trying to just describe this. It just wasn't working for him.
Anonymous.
Yeah, I think that's it. It barely touched the ball for a lot of the game, and in spells he was, and he's got someone up front with him, and the ball was heading to his direction a lot. I think. Again, I don't like people going over the top with criticism and slagging them off in public and stuff like that. It never sits well. And any time I lose my head, it's always in a controlled WhatsApp environment, and then I go, right, okay, I can breathe now. I can go out into public and be normal. But I mean, I understand some of the frustrations, and we do have a lot of strikers as well. So it's not like the Hogg situation where we've only got sort of a handful of number 6s and he's very different to the other ones. I mean, Danny Ward's got to compete with Healy, Hogg, Callum Marshall, Karoma, Bojan Radulovic when he's back from injury, and there's a lot of different strikers there. I mean, and Kean Harrott, who's still at the club as of today. I mean. Danny Ward needs to. I think we need to see a little bit more, don't we? So far, he was good against Morecambe. Let's give him his credit there. He was pretty good against Morecambe, but as the senior striker, you kind of look to him a little bit more, and you sort of think, do you know what, Danny? We just need a little bit more in terms of your ability to hold it up and bring others in. And there was a lot of passes were sort of fizzed towards him, but he was just not quite there. I don't know whether it's a sharpness issue, whether it'll play into it, but it just wasn't the best of games really for him, but we've seen better from him, and I'm sure there'll be better performances as well.
I'll be honest, with Ward, I think he got picked on Saturday to mind Marshall, having done the same sort of role against Morecambe, and it just didn't work. I felt it was harsh leaving Karoma out. I think he's been probably the standout of the strikers, and I wouldn't have put him down as a striker either, to be honest, at the start of the season. But I think he's earned his place. I hope he starts on Saturday, so I think he deserves that. Ward just looks, I don't want to say past it, but he just doesn't look.
His head looked elsewhere for minutes, for certain minutes, and then he'd come back into it, and then he just, I don't know, there was just something not quite.
It's almost makes you wonder if he knows that he's potentially on the way out this window, or, there's been a lot of talk about getting another striker in. Obviously, those rumours are really, really strong, and hopefully, I think we all hope that something happens on that either today or tomorrow. But I think he probably thinks he's drifting down the pecking order a little bit, and his performances have shown that. He's behind Karoma, he's behind Marshall, he's behind Healy for me. Healy's just got this horrible knack of being injured all the time. But so I think the other ones, well, yeah, and I just think, has he got something to offer this season? I genuinely thought the start of the season it maybe would have at this level, but I don't think we've seen anything so far that wouldn't seem being anywhere near 11, to be honest.
I mean, we've seen Danny Ward's been written off before. He was written off before Neil Warnock came in quite harshly by everyone, probably including ourselves. And he was excellent at that point. Last season didn't go to plan, but he was excellent in the Carlos Corberán season. So we've seen Danny Ward do it. So hopefully we see a bit more from Danny in the coming.
I think it's both with him, with Ward and Hogg. They've both got a role to play. I just don't think it's anywhere
off the field
near.
as well. Yeah,
off the field as well. I think they need that around the younger lads. I think that's, like I said, I think that's why we're picked alongside Marshall to sort of old man him and mind him through the games. But with Hogg and Ward, I'm probably with a lot of people here that I don't think the role should be as influential as it is in the 90 minutes. I think we've got other options, and you've got people like Ayapenda, and there's a time when these lads have got to be let loose.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll see. Well, hopefully brighter days are ahead anyway on that one. Right. So let's get the view from the almost said the Walsall side, the Shrewsbury side. So Chris Hudson from Salopcast was very kind enough to give us a preview in the warm up, and he's back again here just to tell us how the game went from his perspective from their side.
This was a hard defeat for us to take in many ways. It made it 3 losses out of 3 and left us stranded at the bottom of the table. Yet I don't think Huddersfield played us off the park by any means. In truth, I'd say you had one 15-minute or so spell of pressure in that first half, and you made that count by scoring the only goal of the game in that period. Either side of that, if anything, we were the side that had carried the greater threat. Our striker John Marquis had 3 sights of goal and should have taken at least one of those. And our young lonely Tommy O'Reilly rattled the crossbar, of course, just moments after your goal. Our work rate was good, and our press did seem to stifle your team as an attacking force, though equally, we just didn't do enough in the second half to warrant getting back into the game. It ended up descending into a rather drab affair. Even if we'd scored an equaliser, your lot would probably have been able to find another gear, as it did appear like you were rather coasting and happy to settle for what you already had. Huddersfield may have won 3 out of 3 so far, but I do feel they'll have to raise their standards if they want to stay at the top in what is expected to be a very competitive League One. Sadly for us, I fear it's just going to be a long, hard season and a slog to try and stay up.
There we go. Thanks to Chris. I do certainly wish Chris the best of luck. Decent little club, Shrewsbury.
To be honest, if he'd just played that at the start, he could have saved everybody last half hour. He nailed it, didn't he?
Yeah. I'll tell you what. Let's move on, shall we? A win's a win, in it. At the end of the day,
100%.
30 of those this season, no matter how it comes. I don't think anyone will care come May, will they?
No.
Even if Danny Ward starts all of them and doesn't score any, as long as he's enabling his strike partner, no one will care.
Yeah,
no one will care.
Absolutely.
Right, let's touch upon the Walsall game. Speaking of not caring, who gives a shit that we lost to Walsall? Because I don't. This league campaign could hit 49 games if we're in the playoffs. I'm genuinely not asked about a competition that everybody tries to get knocked out of, cluttering up our campaign. I really don't care. Same for the Bristol Street Motors thing. I do not care. It isn't just not my. I mean, if we get to the final, I'll be there with my flag and face paint and what have you, being a shithouse, But if I generally don't care from up till that point. I'm focused on the league campaign. Huddersfield need to focus on the league campaign. We've just seen today that the injuries are starting to pile up a little bit for Town now, and I just don't want any more games just to interfere with what hopefully will be a decent league campaign. I mean, the FA Cup I still like it. Me and Neil, I mean, we're a few years older than Johnny, not that much, but the FA Cup's still decent to us, isn't it? We remember a lot of the stuff on TV with BBC One, where the whole day was the build up on.
Still got that little bit of nostalgia to it, on it, and rest of cups are just their interferences, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, we have to start that in round 1 as well. We don't get into going in round 3 anymore, so that'll be a culture shock as well to some people. So that's all eating into your league campaign, and we could be looking towards 60 games this season. On the flip side, Josh Ruffles made his first start since November, first appearance since last November, so he was never going to be 100% fit and firing and raring. He scored, he did okay. Same goes for Ollie Turton, who played in defence as well. That's his second 90 minutes since the 4th of Feb 2023. Some players coasted, yes, I won't name them. And some could say, some people could say, right, that's 2.5 games now where we've been below par. Are things starting to shift down a little bit? Our Town sort of being found out? But for me, I look at it more importantly that fringe players got minutes. I know Tom Yapenda came on, didn't quite get as many minutes as what I'd hoped, but I think you can only make so many changes anyway before the FA start wagging the finger, or the Football League, whoever it is. For me, I thought the referee was a complete ass. I look at this. There's a clear foul on Headley in the build-up to the red card. A clear foul. It's not even close. And then the guy dives. Simple. Absolutely simple. The guy dives. It's not a red card. He dives. He cheats. I mean, Matty Pearson should know better anyway. It's that bloody diagonal ball again, Johnny. That's done it, isn't it? And Matty Pearson should position himself a little bit better, I think. The guy's movement's really good. And he was really good throughout, wasn't he, the young striker? The pen for me was a dive as well, but it's silly for Headley to put his hands on him anyway. But he dives. And I just thought the referee was absolutely shite. The cup's shite. I don't care. That's it. That's it for me. I don't care. I was annoyed for 5 minutes because we'd thrown away a 3-2 lead. I wasn't bothered about going out. I was more bothered about throwing away, the 2-0 lead we threw away. What I found the most interesting was Michael Duff talks about changing the mentality and seeing games out like that. I just really like the way Michael Duff talks. He makes so much sense to me, and I think he makes a lot of sense to Huddersfield fans. The way he talks, the way he handles himself, I think he's just, I say it every week, but I think he's perfect for Huddersfield Town. And it was that really about the mentality, changing mentality, and having to see games like that out, even if you're down to 10 men, you shouldn't do it. I mean, I thought we struggled personnel-wise because the defence, and I mean, Hellick's had a bit of a stinker there. I love Mikael Hellick. He's you know, I'm a bit old to be doing favourite players and stuff, but Mikael Hellick's absolutely class for me. I mean, he's not come out of that particularly well, has he, with the last 2 goals? But I honestly, lads, I don't really care if we beat Rotherham on Saturday. Who cares about Walsall? Honestly, Neil.
Me and Johnny were talking about this before we started recording, and I think my view on the Walsall game is I couldn't give a shit that went out of that cup, because I think I agree with you that we're going to potentially play 50 plus games this season, and it doesn't really matter because we're not going to win it. It for me was more of the manner of how we lost. I think 2-0 up against a team a league lower with less than half an hour left, you shouldn't be losing that. And we just imploded a little bit. I think the young lad up front for them was exceptional. I thought they were really, really good. Yeah, we're good. On the night, he could have had 4 because he missed an absolute sitter before we scored, and then obviously missed the pen. One to watch, I think. One to keep eyes on there.
One from Stoke, him. Is that, I think?
Yeah, so really good. Impressed with him. But we were awful. We looked like one interested. We played like one interested. When we went 2-0 up, you're thinking, how's that happened? We're out, we move on, win on Saturday, nobody gives a shite, do they?
We're talking about like we're not interested as well, aren't we, Johnny? It's just...
Yeah, I mean, the biggest positive to me is what you've touched on there, the fact that I think anyone was like making a last-minute scout report on Hellick, do they, don't they? You probably like stay away, move to the next down,
well done,
name down the list. So I was watching that, the only thing I can take out of that game from a positive perspective. I guess the thing is, like they say, the temperature will be taken after Rotherham. Neil's touched on a few points there. You think, well, could you slightly concern me? It's a relatively strong team with a bit of a mixed bag in defence, kind of giving some minutes in legs, and I think it looked like that. But yeah, it's hard to get too excited about it. I think it's just, if we've gone down a different way, I think people have been less concerned. It's the manner of the defeat. Duff comes out and says the right things. We take it as a lesson because, do you know what I mean? There are senior players in that team who did have shockers, to say the least, who can't do that in a League One game. But ultimately, I think that's what it's got to be. We've never done well in the EFL Cup, and we've had successful seasons. So it's just one of them, isn't it? I think everyone, lesson learned, take the lessons out of it, a bit of a telling off, and look at your attitude to a certain extent, not in a bad way, but just attitude around game management. Minutes in a couple of players' legs, which hopefully will help as well.
Exactly. Who cares? When we touched on earlier that we've got 2 new signings through the door. You happy with that, guys? I mean, next week when the window closes, the window closes at the end of this week, but when it closes, we'll do a proper thing on the podcast about the players we brought in. But just to touch upon them because they came in yesterday. Happy birthday to me for 2 new signings from Huddersfield Town, so that was nice.
Nice.
Joe Hodge came in, midfielder, who's had a little loan spell at QPR, been at Man City, good pedigree. Says his favourite players N'Golo Kante and likes to play like him. That can't be a bad thing at all, can it? So, maybe we've got someone who's a little quicker in that number 6 role who can pass the ball. She's really interesting. He's obviously going to be quite quite young and green, I think, at times. So I think having someone like Hogg with him as well is perfect. It's just a loan from what I can see at the minute. I don't know if there's any clauses in there at the moment which make that permanent come the end of it. But Nigel Lonwijk as well. That's Longwijk. Is that where you're from, Neil?
So I am indeed, yeah.
So there's quite a lot of Lonwijk. He pronounced it, didn't he, on the video I watched yesterday?
We'll just call it Mike. It's easy.
Yeah, Big Nige. Call him Big Nige. Stripey Nigel in his stripey Huddersfield Town. So yeah, Nigel has come in, and for me that's a really good one because we mentioned it on the podcast that Brody Spencer got injured, didn't he, against Shrewsbury, which we didn't touch upon. I'm sure he doesn't listen to this podcast and he's got far better things to do. But if he does, Brody, all the best and hope you're back as soon as possible. But I felt we needed a left-sided centre-back to move Brody over to the other side. And I'm delighted that I brought in a left-sided centre-back who's got good pedigree, Jonny, because he was there, played most of the games when Plymouth romped the league with 100 points. So that cannot be a bad thing whatsoever. And he's obviously got a slight understanding with Mikel Miller, having played only a handful of games in that League One campaign, but they know each other. And that'll be an interesting combo up the left-hand side as well. I think he's right-footed, is Nigel Lonwijk, despite playing on the left, but he's very comfortable on that side. And obviously being Dutch, he'll be able to play out from the back as well. So there's a lot of boxes ticked there. And as we're heading towards the end of the window, I think a lot of people are kind of backtracking on Mark Cartwright out there and Kevin Nagel, etc. And they're just a striker away from everybody sort of saying, sorry, we doubted you. So we're just very, very close. It's been a great window so far, and just one final big piece to finish off with. But on Nigel Lonwijk, it all looks good, doesn't it? We've not seen him play. I can't sit here and say I've seen him play in any great detail. But from what we've seen, what we hear, it looks a good one.
It does. I mean, I've got a friend who's a Plymouth fan. He's not a season ticket holder because he lives up north. It's quite a commute. But he kind of reached out and said, you've got a good one there. Kind of off the pitch, he's kind of got a bit about him as well. So I think the fans will like him. But yeah, he can play with the ball at his feet. He's not a dinosaur defender, which is what we need. Again, from what we touched on previously, defenders are being asked to kind of do a little bit more in this system as well. And we'll do just with the quality opposition that we've got and how we'll look to play with teams. We needed a bit of support on that left-hand side. Like I say, I don't think he's left-footed, but he does naturally play on that side, so that's good. He's got experience playing there. So yeah, that really ticks a box and something that we all kind of said we needed. Joe Hodge looks a good player. Again, it's a highlight reel. That's all I can go off. I've not seen him play, but Jimmy, he got games under his belt last season at the level above. He seems to kind of be like a bit nippier, combative kind of number 6, which is good. Can finish, which looks decent as well. And provide a bit of cover. It does kind of put a bit of question mark on Kasumu and where we kind of see him playing. That might be a conversation for another day. But I think, again, it's just that little bit of depth. We've actually got depth in midfield. And if we all just stop and recognise how much of a big statement that is, because we've not had that for the last two and a half seasons. So that's good to see.
And the rest.
And the rest. So, yeah, it's going on your final point there, Matt. I think, like I say, if we can get a striker in who, what we said, a striker who's kind of got proven League One track record, which we're linked to one, then I think, yeah, we've kind of got everything that we need, really. And then it's just now sit and wait, isn't it? See who if anyone does leave. But I think we're in a position where if at this now, if someone does leave, we're in a commanding position to get the right money. And I think it's really, if no one does leave, then I think it's a very highly rated transfer window for me. We've done what we needed to do in difficult circumstances and got everyone over the line that I think we wanted, bar the elephant in the room. But then I don't think we should have looked to match what other teams were paying them. So I think, yeah, A-star from me.
It's a bit harsh on calling me that, Jonny. Neil, just to finish us off here, you think you're quite happy with that as well?
Yeah, I mean, if they get who they've been linked with heavily over the line over the next sort of 24 hours, I think they've had a cracking window. I think there's quite a few people critical that they've not had the clear out that they should have had. But you can only get rid of players if people are willing to take them. Simple as that. And I think what the credit you've got to give the club there is, even though they've not had loads of outs, they've still brought in what we needed. So, kudos to them for doing that, because that's a big call for them to make in this league. And I think a week ago when we left the Shrewsbury game, we're all saying everybody to a man saying we need a left-sided centre back, another midfielder, and a striker. So if they nail that this week, can't fault it, can you?
Absolutely not. I think that's all we've got time for this week on the Andy Takes That Chance review show. So, Neil, thank you very much. We'll catch you in the warm-up in a moment. Johnny, thank you very much. We will release you and see you both back on the review show as soon as possible.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
There's a team that is dear to its followers. The colours are bright blue and white. They're a team of renown, and they're the pride of the town. And the game of football is their delight. And all the while upon the field of play, thousands loudly cheer them on the way. Often you can hear them say, who can beat the town today? And then the bells will ring so merrily, and every goal shall be a memory. So town, play up and bring that cup back to Huddersfield. So town, play up and bring the cup back to Huddersfield.